And once more, dear brothers and sisters, Sunday night, 8 o'clock, all across social media. Let us go into the breach. I got to say, right off the bat, Cat's in the chat room. Says, first dork reporting. Thank you, Kat. We love it. But you're not a dork. You're absolutely not a dork. John Boy's with us. Kat says, Kat's from Texas. And Jackie's with us. And we're sure we're going to have a really good crowd tonight. We got a great conversation for you. Just some, topics of interest and different things that we, Joe and I come across during the week that we say, something? This is a story that a couple of jamokes like us want to talk about Sunday night, 8 o'clock, on social media. So remember, speaking of social media, wherever you find this conversation, whether it be on YouTube, on Facebook, whatever platform it is, please like or subscribe or share or hit a little bell or do something to help us in that way, something that will take you all of about 8 seconds to do. We really appreciate that. Of course, keep us in your prayers, as always, because that's the greatest support that you could give us. And remember, 2 other things. We are on the Crusade channel on Mondays, crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. And we encourage everyone to go and take advantage of the free 30-day trial subscription, because not only are Joe and I there, also Mike Church, who is central to the station. It's his station. Mike Church is awesome, along with the rest of his lineup. And also we are on the Veritas Catholic Network. Okay, our interviews air Sunday afternoons at 5 o'clock. We got a new one up there that should be available for podcast tomorrow, that you could get to by downloading the Veritas Catholic Network mobile app. And I think John Bergsma, great conversation for today from John Bergsma. And there's 8 others up on our page on the podcast site for Veritas Catholic Network. If you want to do some binging for Joe and Joe interviews, then we definitely encourage you to do that. And so who's that? Joshua was with us. Said, hi, Joe and Joe. This is the first time that I was available to catch your show live. I'm super stoked. We're super stoked to have you, Joshua.
Thanks, bro.
All right, so we have a great conversation. Give you a quick overview. We got John Lydon, a.k.a. Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols. He had actually something nice to say about Donald Trump. I wonder if he's going to get canceled. But he's got something to say about America, and we think you're going to be interested in it. Dave Portnoy, I like that guy. Here's a guy eats pizza all over the country. How jealous am I that the guy can get paid for trying pizza all over the country? And a shout out, because my cousin owns a small diner in New Jersey, and because of David Portnoy, she was able to get by. In other words, until she opened up, because he put together a fund and raised some money.
Millions of dollars.
Millions of dollars. My cousin and her daughters, they put together a video. They sent it to him. He said they'll get a direct deposit on Monday. And for a few weeks, they were kept going by Dave Portnoy. So I like him to begin with because he helped my family. Okay. I like him even more because Joe and I will not curse on this show, okay? But Dave did. So we'll substitute the curses, but you'll understand what we're talking about when it comes to the woke critics out there. We're all getting tired of woke, so we all have to keep speaking out against wokeism. Beckett Adams, I think, is watching the front line with Joe and Joe.
Should be. That's
right. Beckett Adams says Republicans are insane to go on regime media. We don't call it mainstream media anymore here, by the way. We call it regime media. You are insane, Mr. or Mrs. Republican, if you go on MSNBC or CNN or give an interview to the New York Times. You're insane or you're smoking crack. Either way, stay away from regime media, and we're going to talk about that. Sweden has stopped prescribing puberty blockers for, I believe it's kids under the age of 16. Now, that's not enough for Joe and Joe, but at least it's a start, okay?
And I think stare at dirty people.
Remember that? Who was that?
Oh, my friend, this old Irish guy used to talk about, because that was Scandinavia back in the day was the only place that you can get sort of a sex change.
Oh, okay.
Way back in the day. He was an old Irishman. I knew him from church. He used to say, there are dirty people in Sweden.
I love it. And here's another thing. This is why we have to stay away from regime media. The final story we're going to covering. If you listen to the pro-abortionists out there, they would have you believing that an abortion clinic is bombed every other day by fascists like us. There's no bombings of abortion clinics. Okay, but nobody's going into abortion clinics or abortories, abortion mills, death chambers, whatever you want to call them. Nobody's dragging out the baby killer who's performing the abortion, bringing him out on the street and beating the crap out of him. Okay. But I'll tell you what, pro-life pregnancy centers are under attack. Do you think the media is going to cover that? Well, guess what? We know they're not, but Joe and I will. So this is going to be a rollicking conversation. Okay. Tom Gugliotta's in the chat room. Gotta love Tom. Colin, Suzanne, Not in Vogue is here. Lisa's here. Lisa says playing nice today. Or Not in Vogue says playing nice today. We're gonna try, Not in Vogue. We're gonna try to play nice. Generally speaking, we are. So anyway, having said all that, let's go to Johnny Rotten.
And happy Mother's Day to all your moms out there.
I'm so sorry about that. Yes, happy Mother's Day to everybody.
So let's, as Joe said, Todd Houston reports on this one. The Sex Pistols frontman Johnny Rotten tore into the Democratic Party and said the collapse of America is happening because of Joe Biden's nonsense. You have a Democratic Party that doesn't respect anything but the latest woke fashion trend. That's to destroy America. Rotten told the UK Times in a recent interview. Obviously, he was born Johnny John Lydon in Britain. He's also now an American citizen. He became an American citizen in 2013. Lydon scoffed at the Democrats and the mainstream media's accusation that the GOP is the party of rednecks, especially in the era of Trump. Republicans, and these are his words, are regular working people and not the redneck-toting, moronic race haters that the liberals claim they are. He's 100% right.
Bravo, Johnny Rotten.
I mean, he's spot on. I mean, it's kind of funny. Like when I'm 50 years old, I was born in 1970. I mean, when I was a kid, you know, the Democrats were known for it was like the party of the working man, like the union man. It's completely flipped, especially under Trump. I mean,
that script is really full. You're right. You're right.
Completely. I mean, my wife and I were actually talking about this today. And I say this objectively. Obviously, I don't agree with just about every one of their ideas. There's some ideas I guess we could work with on, but for the most part, I mean, I just can't get on board. Unless you're super rich and unless you're super poor, everything in between, I don't know how you could be a Democrat right now. I really, really don't. Like, I have to scour my mind and have to be, I'm being completely honest.
I can't find an issue. I mean, we've been doing this now for well over 2 years, at least in social media, right? Maybe closer to 3 years. We still have not found any issue that let's say traditional Democrats, call them blue collar Democrats.
I really,
no, unless again, Joe and I make it clear, abortion is our first and foremost preeminent issue. That's the one that we vote on. Okay. First and foremost, that's what we consider. So we understand that many of those blue collar Democrats, maybe abortion for them is the first thing that they vote on. They want to keep abortion legal. But outside of abortion, can a working person show me a reason why they would vote for this Democrat Party? And let's break it down. Let's break it. Are they globalist?
Absolutely.
All right, which destroys wages. If you're a globalist and you're for open borders and you're for all these BS trade agreements, then you're destroying workers' wages. Okay. You knew, all you blue collar people out there, you knew because they told you, by the way. I never understood that about the American people. And you didn't have to guess where Biden was going. The first thing he did was cost blue collar people hundreds of thousands of jobs by ending fracking in the Keystone Pipeline. So did you vote for them because he was going to protect your job? Because obviously you were either lied to or you didn't want to hear the warnings coming from people like us. Say, don't vote for these guys because they're gonna regulate you out of a job. Think about, you just mentioned unless you're super rich. Are you Jeff Bezos? Are you, what's the other guy from Apple? Tim, whatever his name is, Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Not that he's a raging liberal, but Elon Musk. You're not one of those guys yet. Who's in bed with the Democrat Party? All of big tech, Google, Microsoft, Bill Gates, all of them, not just rich, Joe. Not even super rich.
They're above the fray.
But this is the party that the Democrats. These are the people that the Democrats are in bed with. So John Lydon, Johnny Rotten, he's exactly right. In other words, they attacked us because we voted for Trump because we felt like, actually, you know what, on economics, amongst other things, he's on our side. The Democrats are not.
And also, not for nothing, we're experiencing inflation right now. Everything has gone up, particularly gas. I saw gas today at $2.89 a gallon. And New Jersey is the cheap where we live because Newark processes the gas. A lot of gas come into the refineries in Newark. That's why it smells so lovely on the Jersey Turnpike. But It's the cheapest gas in America. Sum up from what I've heard, $2.89 a gallon. Before the election, I took note of it because I knew the gas prices were going to go up. It was $2.07.
Right.
In the same gas station I saw today, which was $2.89. That affects regular working people.
Right.
What about the guy that's a plumber that drives a van all day long? That's all he does. It's gas guzzling van.
Right.
Maybe he has 3 of them on the road. That could be $20 extra
Every time
he fills up his tank.
And the excuse that they use all the time, well, we're not raising taxes on the working people. But when you do things that cause gas prices to go up,
which cause food prices to go up,
right? Who do you think you're affecting? Bill Gates is going to eat foie gras no matter how much it costs, and he's going to have caviar no matter how much it costs. But if the price of a head of lettuce at ShopRite goes up,
how about milk
or diapers?
There you go.
Okay, babies. Okay, yeah. Diapers. Okay, if all those prices go up because of, let's say, regulation that the Democrats want to impose, well, that's a tax. Don't you get? If you have to pay in total because prices go up, gas taxes go up, the price of gas goes up, and all these things go up. If it's costing you an extra $50 a week, $200 a month.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money for a working person.
And it doesn't, you see, this is the sick part. It doesn't register with people. You could have this conversation. People who are, it's tribal. They grow up this way. It doesn't register. Like recently, there was a circle of CEOs. They talked to the Biden regime, basically saying, if you raise the corporate tax to 28%, we are going to have to lay people off, or we're going to leave the country. Remember, this is a global economy. People don't have to stay here. It doesn't register in people's heads. You could have this conversation, and this is money coming right out of your pocket. I just saw the April numbers for new jobs added to the economy. It's slowed down.
It was anemic, to use the CNBC term.
They sell a bad bill of goods, and people eat it up. I'll be honest with you. It's sad. This is one of the themes that we've always harped on. This is not the Democratic Party of 1970. This isn't even the Democratic Party of Joe Biden when he ran for Senate. He is not that guy. By the way, this isn't even the Democratic Party of Barack Obama.
Yeah, it's gone well beyond him.
Way beyond him. This is what I'm saying. And you know something? Here's another thing, people. This was so clear before the election.
Yeah.
Honest to goodness, I don't give people that when people say I really don't. They were very the only thing they did is they put Joe Biden up, and he basically put the wrapping paper on it. He's still doing it, but basically the fruit of the decisions are right there. We're living in there's inflation going on right now, right, and prices have gone up, and what's it called? Jobs increasing. By the way, jobs should be going up right now. The COVID crisis in many states is over. We live in New Jersey and New York. It's still
over. But everybody knows I work in the hospitality business. Okay, restaurants 75% now open as of this past weekend, and the bars in the restaurants are open. So, like you said, I'm only saying that to back up what Joe's saying. Okay. The economy should be doing better, adding a lot more jobs because COVID restrictions are getting lifted, even in blue states. Why? Because they're probably going broke. Okay, so they know that they need the money. You know what I'm trying to say.
Look at this. Gasoline's $5.15 a gallon in Orange County,
So
California.
Chris says, JC, responded to JC in the chat, Irvine in Orange County.
I've actually stayed at the what's it called? The Crown Plaza on the 405 in Irvine. I stayed there for 2 weeks. I know it very well.
$5.15. And make no mistake, the Democrats are trying to turn America. Okay, and we'll get back to John Lydon, because when we say America, when the elitists out there talk about flyover country, okay, that's their way of saying we don't care about all those people in the middle. They want to turn the rest of the country into California, and then you get what Chris was talking about. You think $5.15 for a gallon of gas in Arkansas is going to go over so well? You might get a revolution. You might get a revolution. Those people aren't making the kind of money in some of these states that you could afford to fill up. Like, let's say, for argument's sake, you got a 15-gallon tank, all right, which let's say is standard 15, 16-gallon tank on a mid-sized sedan, okay? You're going to fill up for $75, $80. I feel bad enough in Jersey. The other day it cost me $48. Okay. In other words, and I had to fill up for about
You
over
drive a
3.
Nissan.
I drive a
It's not
Nissan.
even a big
It's not even like a
car.
Cadillac. I like to drive a Goomba. I love to drive a
It's not
Cadillac.
even like a big truck or a big like SUV. It's just a car.
Right. So if you get some of these people, let's say Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, some of the states that let's say are not as economically prosperous, okay, where jobs are pay a lot less and everything. You try to impose $5.15 in those places, those people are going to be paying $75 every time they fill up the tank. They're going to go ballistic.
The thing that frustrates me, but then people still pull that lever. I honestly, it's a sickness.
Can you blame? Let me ask you a question. I want to ask all you guys a question out there too, but you segued us into a question I'd like to ask you. Who do you blame though? Do you blame them? In other words, because we know they're going to do it anyway. I blame Republicans for allowing it to happen. I blame Republicans. Trump tried for 4 years. Okay, obviously he had to fight against the left. We all know that. We're going to be very fair to Trump here. Okay, he had to fight against the left. Okay, Trump tried for 4 years to have the Republican Party shed itself of its Mitt Romney image that it had in 2012. Okay, or the oil man image that you had with George W. Bush, who in hindsight was not a man of the people. He tried to make himself out to be. He's a globalist elitist too, standing on a stage with Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. I blame Republicans. Joe blames Republicans, or at least I believe you do, because Republicans allowed many of those working people who, as you said, some of them are just culpable. I'm not saying that they're not, but many of them, Joe, it's because Republicans refuse to shed that image that they are the party of business rather than doing what Donald Trump did, which was say, no, no, no. I am for a Republican Party that values business. I love business. I'm a businessman. But my workers got to be taken care of, because if Americans aren't prospering, we're not doing well as a nation. I think the problem falls ultimately with Republicans. I really do.
It's political identity. We did a great interview, if you look it up on Veritas Catholic Network, with a professor from Georgetown, Josh Mitchell, Dr. Josh Mitchell. He wrote a book on it. People identify, like I'll use this part of the country. In New Jersey, if you're from Hudson County, which is like Jersey City, Hoboken, they call them like Hudson County Democrats. It's a mindset. I could spot them from a mile away. People who are from Jersey City, a lot of people migrated from there into the suburbs, and they start talking, and that's the way they vote. They don't look at, and here's another thing, they vote and it affects them adversely. That's the sick part. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's what I think, what's it called? This gentleman from the Sex Pistols, was it
Johnny Rotten? Just call him Johnny Rotten.
Johnny Rotten. It was basically talking about unless you're super rich, or basically, to be honest with you, even if you're super poor, because sometimes people, when I say super poor, you're like drying cars at a car wash, I still would want a fighting chance.
Right.
You see, that's just me.
Right.
Like, I want a fighting chance. I don't want your money. I want to take care of myself. And believe me, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I want a fighting chance. That's what America is about. That's what differentiates this country from other countries. The minute the government continues to basically be your dad, it takes away that fighting chance. It's over. Like in other countries, believe me, and I've seen many countries, I've traveled a lot, and this is Europe. Never mind like going to Asia or South America. Your father's a milkman, you're a milkman.
Right.
That's the way it is. The path upwards is it's hard here.
But the Democrats, as you said, they used to be on the side of giving that working person that chance. And I would be too. You work, you should make enough money where you're able to provide for your family. And if you want to save your money and maybe start a small business or whatever, millions of people did that. Millions of immigrants did that. Okay. The Democrats used to champion that. But you notice since during Barack Obama, but now on steroids, okay, they look down their nose at working people, because working people say, yeah, I want a fighting chance, but I don't agree with you on gay marriage. I want a fighting chance. I don't want a boy in my girl's locker room. I agree with you on this, but no, I'm not for abortion. Okay. And that's when the Democrats drop the hammer on them. And I get the feeling it's because what they call flyover country, I guess, middle America, the people that John Biden is talking about here, okay, and commenting on, they're not in lockstep with this ultra left neo-Marxist ideology. They're not. They're just, and on the face of it, how could any sane person be? I mean, we use the bathroom example as the perfect one, or the locker room. What sane father wants a boy in the locker room with his 14-year-old daughter? No sane father wants that, regardless of what the reasons are. And people recognize that. They don't want it, in particular in red states, okay? They're passing, DeSantis just passed legislation against it. DeSantis is becoming our hero, by the way.
Yeah, he's the guy.
Because not only is he talking about legislation, he's getting it through the Senate. So recently on the HR 1 bill, the election bill, that Nancy Pelosi wants to try to nationalize what happened in November. They came out with an election integrity bill. He also signed the bill that will penalize big tech. Okay, big tech if they deplatform any political candidate, they could get fined up to $250,000. Okay, and he also signed. There was one other one he signed. I don't remember. My point is, the Democrats now look down on all those people. Okay, John Lydon says, talking about these people, he says they're Donald Trump supporters. Now this is where it makes it seem like he's been watching the Frontline with Joe and Joe. I'm not kidding. Okay, I'm really not. I'm actually going to try to get an interview with Johnny Rock. I am. That would be awesome. That would be a barn burner. They're Donald Trump supporters. They work hard for their families and they want to be respected. What are we talking about here? Do I want you to agree with me? I would like for you to, but if you don't, that's fine. But you're gonna respect me, and the Democrats have no respect for working people. He says people have been so misled into hating a human being, Trump, just on the whim of the media. 4 solid years of CNN hatred has done a lot of damage to this country. He's not a politician, and why should he be? Now, here's the key line. We've all had enough of politicians. I think he's spot on, brother.
Well, that's why Donald Trump won. And sadly, it seems that people want politicians because, I mean, I'm not going to get into the whole election thing, but a lot of people, I'll just use that term, a lot of people did vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I'm not going to talk about the number, but a lot of people did. So, and I don't know how. Again, speaking objectively, just to say you don't like Donald, that's not good enough.
No.
That's not good.
To say I don't like Trump.
It's okay.
Let me tell the people a story, quick story. I've said before, but we got a lot of new people at the Frontline with Joe and Joe, and this is a quick one, okay? My wife and I are in mass. This is during Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings, okay? One of the women, in our parish, or we were at that parish at the time, she was sitting behind us, very nice woman, right? And my wife turned around because we were appalled, because any sane American should have been appalled at how the Democrats treated Brett Kavanaugh. Okay, my wife turned around very nicely and said, "Did you see how they're treating Kavanaugh?" This was the response she got. I don't like Trump. My wife said, "I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm saying, but did you see the way they're treating I don't like Trump." And that was the only thing she said. Right.
That's the sickness. That's a sickness, Joe. That's a sickness. That's not being even adult, Joe. Like to say, I don't care that you don't like him.
Right.
I don't care.
Right. I'm commenting on something totally different. Just like if I turned around and said, do you really want to vote for Joe Biden? He said he's going to end fracking and cost working people about 100,000 jobs. I don't like the Republicans. That's not what I asked you. I asked you if you're going to vote for Joe Biden, who's basically going to regulate you out of a job. Now, I don't like Republicans. And again, I understand that. But Republicans have changed their image because of Donald Trump. They need to do a better job. Okay. But people still have that lockstep mentality. I can't vote Republican. And by the way, you mentioned about politicians. Okay. That's another thing. The next time somebody who says they voted for Biden says, yeah, all politicians are alike, I swear I want to knock them right out. Okay. You had somebody who wasn't a politician, who went against the media, who went against the establishment, not because he was perfect and not because Joe and Joe agree with him on everything. But Donald Trump was the guy who was the outsider, and not for nothing. The guy got a lot done in 4 years.
He did.
With all the headwinds from the press and from the Democrats, he got a lot done that benefited working class and middle class people in this country. And your best answer is, I don't like Trump.
It doesn't. But this is the sickness, and this is where I'll be honest with you, where we're kind of lost. People have to get over that. They got to get over that. Because you have to think a little bit. You don't even have to be honest with you. You don't have to be like some brain surgeon either. You just have to look at issues and weigh them.
Right.
But not enough people do that. I mean, I remember Romney when he debated Obama. He said, you're going to get 47% of the vote if you don't even show up. And it proved to be true because Joe Biden didn't even campaign. He didn't even campaign. I mean, it's sad.
It really is.
It is sad. It is sad. It is sad.
Yep.
And again, to be honest with you, we get what we deserve because right now, We have inflation. It's a clown show. It's like a circus world when you look at the news.
Yep.
And this is what you wanted it. Well, you got it.
Right. And by the way, BLM and Antifa, they're all emboldened. They just beat the crap out of a disabled veteran. It's on video. It's on YouTube. So they beat the crap because they don't care. I think it was Portland. There's something wrong with that place. I know you have family out there. But the thing is, yeah, so they're emboldened because they know they have a regime that's not going to do anything. So all of this is just the beginning. And let me tell you something. If you think you're going to vote for Republicans and everything's going to be good in 2022, that's assuming that everything is okay with the elections in 2022. All right. But even if that's the case, we don't need any more Republicans. Look at what Leiden said. I want to make this point. And this is why I really love this article so much. Okay. This is what Leiden said. He's an individual thinker. I'll give him that for a start, Leiden said of Trump last October. He's not the most lovable fellow on God's earth, but I cannot see the opposition as offering me anything by way of a solution. I don't want a politician running this world anymore. Now, is he fair? Is that fair?
I think, well, again, I'll be truthful with you. I mean, I didn't think he was going to win now, but I don't think he's going to win a second.
I hope he started a media company. Did you see that the other day?
No. I'm talking about Biden. I don't think.
Listen, I was talking to my brother-in-law today, my other brother-in-law. I have this brother-in-law, I have another brother, and his name's Joe too. I was talking to him. He said the same thing. He goes, Biden, but I said, you're assuming he's going to even be there for 4 years. Now, my over-under still stands. I originally said August, but then I moved it to June, where they're going to move Biden out. Now, it's still May, and I still have time for that over-under, but I don't even think he's going to last that long. I don't think he's going to be 1 year in office before they move him out. He's a disaster. No, he's even as the beard, as you described, the package. You know how like you described him as the package? Even as the beard, they sit there and go like this. This guy can't read 3 sentences. They like my best friend used to do it all the time. He used to get aggravated. He used to slap his hand on his head like this. He goes that's what they're doing right now. This guy can't read 3 sentences off the teleprompter. He's falling down on the stairs, going up to the thing. He's got Jill holding his arm while she bends over and picks up his mask. He doesn't have a coherent thought in his head. And they're looking at it going, we got to get rid of this guy. Tom Gugliotta could appreciate that because that's the way they're saying it. Tom, they're going, we got to get rid of this guy. That's exactly. And you know what? Again, not clip him, just invoke the 25th Amendment and move him out. Can I make one more point about the Sex Pistols? It's interesting. See, when you sing songs like Anarchy in the UK, okay, and songs like that, and railing against the Queen and let's say an imposed orthodoxy and things like that, do you know that not many people know this about the Sex Pistols, okay? I still listen to them somewhat back in the day. They had a song called Bodies. Now, this shows you something about John Lydon. He was never in lockstep then, okay, where you could just put him into a nice, neat little political box. Bodies is an anti-abortion song that was written by John Lydon, okay, and performed by the Sex Pistols. I always thought, before I actually listened to the lyrics, I always thought it was a kick-ass song, okay? Universally, that song is criticized by all the left-wing rock and roll critics as not being one of their best songs. And then I realized why. It's an anti-abortion song. The title of the song is Bodies. The Sex Pistols wrote an anti-abortion song, okay? And it just goes to show you that, look, I would not agree with John Lydon, I'm sure, on most things. But one thing I can't take away from the guy is he's not thinking like the crowd. At least he thinks for himself. And I bring that up about the song Bodies because he even did that back in the late 70s.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? And now, again, I'm not going to say a pro-life song. You know, I choose my words carefully, but an anti-abortion song. So interesting. John Lydon, he actually is a friend of the working American. I didn't even know he was American before I read the story. I didn't know he became a citizen. So anyway, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and you know, once you start getting into a conversation about Johnny Rotten, you are way into the breach. We have over 100 people watching right now. God bless you all. And a whole bunch of people in the chat room. Alan62 says, I remember that song. Remember that song, Alan? I tell you, go look at the lyrics. Not now. Don't leave the front line with Joe and Joe. Go look at the lyrics for Bodies, and you'll see it's an anti-abortion song. So irreverence is something that Joe and we like, okay? Now, we like to think that we're faithful Catholics. We practice the faith, and we listen to Holy Mother Church. But we're irreverent, All right. When we feel that the authority or those who are in authority are trying to impose something on us and we feel it's unjust or wrong or just flat out evil, we're going to open our mouths and we're not going to be that nice about it. Johnny Rotten was that way his whole career. I'm finding out Dave Portnoy, he is right. He's right in that mold. And Joe wants to talk about that.
Yeah, this one comes from John Nolte. Basically, as Joe said, Barstool Sports founder Dave Portnoy told his woke critics to go F themselves and hit back on N magazine. The N stands for Nantucket, just so everyone knows, calling its manager spineless. After N magazine published a positive cover profiling Portnoy and his work to raise money for small business, and he raised millions of dollars.
Yes, he did.
So he put his money where his mouth was.
And he didn't give that money to just conservatives. He gave it to liberals, too.
So basically what they were criticizing him is in the past, he made some offensive remarks and actions. The article didn't say what he said. So they were focusing on something in the past. So Portnoy, and basically glossing over, I guess, what he's done presently. So this is what Portnoy basically said. He said, "It's unfortunate that the powers that be at N Magazine are spineless jellyfish who are held hostage by the whims of the vocal minority. Meanwhile, I will continue to do my best to make Nantucket and America a better place while those who hate me can continue to throw cry-baby parties for themselves about how I made a joke they didn't like 20 years ago." It's typical. It's typical.
Anybody to do you ever, like, just on a gut reaction, did you ever want to tell people, could you please just grow up?
Well, it's human because people like, you ever hear the term give credit where credit's due?
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to give credit where credit's due because what this guy has done is help small businesses out. He's been ranting this whole COVID time, basically saying, because he was a small business, he started this is a multi-million-dollar business that he has.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like, he built it and he's basically saying this was a travesty, and sadly a lot of people did get crushed in this. So at the end of the day, of course, they focus on something they don't like. And John Nolte had these comments, and I think he's spot on. And this is what I kind of want to focus on. Although we've talked about Portnoy in the past,
mm-hmm.
He's definitely somebody who I respect because he isn't afraid to raise his voice. A lot of people in those type of situations running a big business, they're going to stay away from it. He doesn't. But this is what Nolte said. He said, "The only language these fascist bullies have no answer for is open defiance. Anyone who responds any other way is not only behaving immorally," this is in their view, "they are inviting the woke Gestapo to bully you right off the face of the earth, to cancel you into oblivion." This is what, again, let me focus on this. Nolte says, "You never apologize to fascists. You tell them to go F themselves. Period. End of story. These Nazis prey on weakness and smell it from a mile away like sharks smell blood in the water. More people need to learn this."
Amen.
Again, he's right. I mean, you don't even have to use that language, but the whole idea is this. This is America. Let's be honest. There's a lot of things I don't agree with. You're entitled to believe them, though. You see, that is an American idea. It's an American idea, and I'm entitled to believe what I want to believe, and I could even say it.
And can I throw in one
Sure.
other thing? And then you're also, as an American, entitled to tell that person who has an idea, I disagree with you and I want to talk about it.
Can't
Because
do
that idea
anymore.
might have an effect on society on some level, whether you're arguing about education or abortion or marriage or transgender, or the economy. You have a right to say your idea, and I have a right to argue against it. And you do not have the right to tell my employer that you don't like my idea, therefore my employer has to fire me, or else you're going to boycott my employer. That's not American.
It's not about the idea or you saying it. What it's about power. You see, they have an edge right now because this is this trend, which I think is going to backfire on them.
Well, you were saying that before the show.
I think it's gone too far. And it's going to backfire on them. They've overplayed their hand as they always do. It's about power. Because basically, at the end of the day, politics is about the power of ideas. What's going to move? They're using terms like blanket terms like you're a hater, you're a racist, you're this. When in fact, And many people who are even black are saying this. Well, I don't know about that.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I think it cheapens the term racist. I think it cheapens the term hater. Just because we're not in lockstep with everything, that doesn't mean I'm a hater or a racist. It just means I don't agree with you.
But
And we could have a conversation.
But what better way? I mean, this is obviously
conversation.
this is something that, aside from the content of what they say, we have to make people aware as best we could across all social media. Okay, we have to make people aware that we're not. We're not letting you take over the language, as Nolte said. We're not going to let you bully us. We're going to fight back against you. You don't have a right to do this, and keep saying it. And another thing too. Racism used to mean something. As far the term used to mean something, and if you were called a racist, it had weight to it, and you had to question it because responsible people don't use a word like that unless it's true. Well, you're not dealing with responsible people. You're dealing with irresponsible children like Ibram Kendi, and who's the other broad from CNBC or MSNBC or CNN? Joy Reid. These are immature children who have taken all the teeth out of that word. You call somebody a racist now, most people look and say, all right, what did he do? He disagrees with you on the economy. Is that why he's a racist? Or he thinks maybe that we shouldn't let China take advantage of us as far as our trade imbalance is concerned. It's an imbalance. Okay. That makes me racist. It's lost its gravitas.
But I think
it meant something at some point.
They know that and they're using it. See, I actually think that it's strategic. It's a term. I can get away with it.
Right.
And it's about power. It's about power. Again, you're cheapening the word. You're cheapening the word because I don't agree with your position on the border. Doesn't make me a racist. Maybe I don't agree with your position on the border because the school system in those border towns are going to be deeply affected and they don't have budget.
Right.
Does that make me a racist?
No, it makes you sane.
But this is what I'm saying. Right. Like if I have that position, like, listen, these towns are already over budgeted. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. That makes me a racist?
Yeah.
No, but and then we could have another conversation. The border has nothing to do with Latinos. It has everything to do with voting. They want them to vote.
Right.
That's why they don't want the ID. It has nothing to do with black people either. It has everything to do with illegals voting.
And remember something, we can historically back that. One thing that makes me sick is historical revisionism. Lyndon Johnson was actually a racist. He was a guy who was a racist. It doesn't matter that he signed the Civil Rights Act. That has nothing to do with it. He was a racist. You know why he signed the Civil Rights Act? And most people don't. The left never wants to talk about this. They make Broadway plays about him. That Bryan Cranston plays Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson was a despicable man. Okay. He said, we passed this legislation, and he used the word N-word. I will not obviously use that word. Okay. He says, we'll have those people, I'll just say, we'll have those people voting for us for the next 200 years. That's what he said. And he said worse than that. And he's a hero. Disagree with Lyndon Johnson. Well, you must disagree with the Civil Rights Act, so therefore you're a racist. He's actually the racist, and it's documented. But I'm the racist because, let's say for argument's sake, like Joe said, because this border, using that as an example, this border situation is unsustainable. You have to do something about, oh, you're a racist. Like you said, it's got no teeth anymore. It's got no weight. And to Nolte's point, the faster we start telling, now we don't have to curse. We don't. Okay, we could be much better than them. All right, we don't have to curse, but tell them you're not bullying us anymore. And stand right in their face and tell them, you're not bullying us. Even Jesus said that. He says, nobody's killing me. I lay down my life. That's the difference, okay? And it's the same thing. We're not letting you bully us. Get it through your head, Ibram Kendi. Get it through your head, Joy Reid. Can I make another point about race? This made me, now everybody out there knows that I have anger issues. Okay, that's kind of like out there. But I still have the ability to laugh, though. Unlike the left, who has no sense. By the way, just as an aside, do they have any sense of humor on the left? I don't think they have any whatsoever. I think they're bereft of humor, not like John Kennedy, who makes me laugh every time he opens his mouth. There's a woman, everybody knows critical race theory is Marxist propaganda. That's all it is. Ibram Kendi is not promoting critical race theory to help black people. He's promoting critical race theory because he wants to promote this neo-Marxist ideology in the schools and in corporate America too. So a woman in Georgia, there's a video going around. She says, I do not want my child taught critical race theory, and that does not make me a racist. Cut to Joy Reid, and Joy Reid says, well, what do you think it makes you? Now, if you had a press that was accountable, held accountable in a court for defamation of character, that woman should sue Joy Reid and her station. I always forget if she's on MSNBC or CNN. It doesn't matter, okay? Sue them. Pick up the phone, call a law firm, call the American Center for Law and Justice, call the St. Thomas More Society, call somebody and say, a public figure just called me a racist and she does not even know me. I want to sue the crap out of them. That's what needs to happen. Like Joe Rossinello always says, money moves the dial. We need to start suing the crap out of them when they libel people in public. Even this poor woman on YouTube who's at a school board meeting who says, I don't want this taught to my kid because it's Marxist. And then she's called a racist by Joy Reid. And Joy Reid gets away with it. I don't understand it, Joe Rossinello. I don't.
Again, I think it's gone too far because, again, America is about, I can voice my opinion and we could have a dialogue, and they're taking that dialogue away. That's not an American idea. That's not even a Republican or a Democratic idea. And that's why I think it's a loser. It's gone too far. It really has. And a guy like DeSantis is doing that in Florida. He's basically like, listen, tough. This is the way it is. Tough. And
tell the people what he did when he signed that bill.
We were going to talk about this is a good segue into this story. We're talking about the press because but DeSantis recently signed an election bill, and he didn't invite. The only people he invited was Fox News. I wouldn't even invited them.
Should have left them all out.
He didn't invite the press. Now they went nuts. But you know something? If you're not going to cover stories legitimately, and I'm not talking about disagreeing with me, I'm basing it upon what they did to him on 60 Minutes.
Right.
He gave them facts. They chose not to report on them, and they painted the story in a different way from the facts. He's actually suing them, from what I heard.
Wait, who's he suing?
He's
suing 60 Minutes.
So my point is, I believe he is. If I'm wrong,
that will move. By the way, that will move the dial.
He says I'm going to fight back, so I'm assuming that means suing.
Well, what did Nolte just say in the story we covered? He said, "Look, these Nazis, they smell fear." Well, you know who doesn't? You know who doesn't fear them?
DeSantis.
Rick DeSantis.
And
Ron DeSantis.
I like that approach.
Yeah.
Listen, if you're not going to cover things correctly, and I'm not talking about disagreeing with me, you can disagree with me, but if you're going to twist things, you're not invited. You are now, like, to be honest with you, you're a non-entity.
What did Trump call them, Joe?
The enemy of the American people. And that's the problem. And Johnny, what's it called? What's his face? Johnny Rotten talked about that, saying in his article how CNN has soiled the people. And we could even grow it even larger. The press, they pump into people's heads certain things. Like Trump, he's a racist. I'll be honest with you. That's a tough one. In my view, I know they always go to Charlottesville. They always point to that.
That was all spin and made up.
The
girl died. That was not made up.
But
the circumstances.
They use like the white supremacists on January 6th. How do you spin that? White supremacists,
right?
Like.
But when you have, like you said, when you have the will of media, you could get away with saying anything. Joy Reid should have been fired for saying that, justifying on her show the shooting of Steve Scalise by a Bernie Sanders hard left supporter, okay, because Steve Scalise is, in Joy Reid's words, anti-choice and anti-marriage equality. She said that, and she still has a job. Now, I should turn around and say, well, you just said something despicable. Now, I don't consider Steve Scalise, I don't identify with him because of this, because he's got white skin. Steve Scalise is Roman Catholic, and he's a paisan. That's why I identify with Steve Scalise, okay? He's obviously not from New Jersey. We wish he was, all right? But I couldn't turn around and sue Joy Reid. He should have sued Joy Reid for making that statement. She still has a job. And she said something that was just so blatantly hateful. But yeah, they could accuse the other side of being haters on all levels, not just racist, against women, against gay people, against all. No, they could accuse the other side with impunity. Okay. And they try to convince the American people that they, of course, Joe and I are haters. You know, as we blow up, that's going to happen. We're prepared for it. Okay. Because we're standing up to the bullies. in our own way. We're standing up to them. You're not gonna make me crawl under a rock. You're not gonna make my brother here crawl under a rock. Okay, but they could get away with it. And Joe, with impunity, can you imagine justifying the shooting of a sitting United States congressman because he's pro-life and anti-gay marriage, against gay marriage? Okay, so that means let's go out and it's okay to pick up a gun and go out and shoot them on the ball field. Or Rand Paul getting his ribs broke by his neighbor.
This is the problem. Even if DeSantis was to win, the media, it's a full-blown attack. And that's why I say don't invite them. And this is what this story is all about.
So go ahead, Joe.
Beckett Adams, he's in the Federalist. He writes, Republicans are insane to engage with left-wing media outlets. This is what he had to say, Beckett. Why do GOP lawmakers keep agreeing to do interviews with partisan activists posing as news anchors? Sure, there's something to be said for going on into the lion's den. Successful efforts to calm a hostile room can win the admiration and respect of one's opponents. But when it comes to newsrooms such as MSNBC, it's like a hyena pit. This is what he calls it. It's beyond hostile. It's crazed. Republicans complain a lot about media bias, claiming they're not being given a fair shake by the press. Adams continued, why then do they continue to patronize news networks that are explicitly not in the business of being fair and impartial? And that's what I'm talking about. They slap you in the face and then you go on there for ratings. No, the answer is I'm not going. You're a non-entity. Zero.
You know what also has to happen too, the other flip side of the coin, Joe? I agree with Beckett. We both agree with Beckett Adams. When CNN calls Ted Cruz's office, Ted Cruz should pick up the phone himself, all right, and talk to them and say, don't ever call me again. The Senate Majority Leader, okay, Mitch McConnell, and the House Majority Leader, Kevin McCarthy, should get all the Republicans and say this. The same way, you be like the Rhino Republicans when they're in charge of the party, okay, like the guy in Georgia who told the Georgian Republicans, said, don't you dare do anything to do a recount in the state. I'll take you off of every committee. I'll take you off. You won't have a chairmanship. Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell should say to every one of them, sorry, we're a party. We're going to stay unified. You do not go on left-wing media. You do not go there. If you do, I promise you, you're losing power in this chamber. I promise you that. I would even tell them, you know what? If Joe and I, let's digress for a second. Joe and I said last week and the week before, and probably the week before that, we don't want Donald Trump to run for president again. I want him to be a power broker. I think that would be better for him.
I might find the media company.
That's what he's doing. And he started this from the desk of Donald J. Trump.
But I'd like to see it bigger.
Well, it's got to start, but it's got to start somewhere. And that's a good start. Two things should happen. One is the one I described about McConnell and McCarthy telling all Republicans, do not go on the left-wing media. That should be number one. Number two, if Fox News wants to keep its conservative audience, and we should all write letters to Fox News, say, we want no more liberals on your show, on your station. None. If they're going to do hard news, that's one thing. Juan Williams, gone. All the rest of them. Fowler, gone. Dick Goodstein, gone. We don't want you anymore. You know what they do? Here's an idea. Want all you listening out there. I said this to Joe before. Starting in the morning on Fox, if you want the liberal point of view, you know what you do? You play a clip from CNN or MSNBC of any one of them, any one of the liberal commentators. You want to know why? Because they all say the same thing. They all read from the same script. So just pull the video, pop it on Fox and say, well, here's the liberal point of view. Okay. And now let's get back to our show. And be about as fair as that. You'll save hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars a year, because you fire all these people. Okay. And you show a little bit more respect for your audience because you don't have these idiots on constantly just hammering home the same line that they got early in the morning that they're spouting on CNN and MSNBC. They shouldn't even have them on, is my point. That's if Fox wants to be considered a legit station or a legit alternative.
Too. I don't listen to any mainstream media anymore. Zero. Nothing. I haven't even listened to Fox. Dude, I'll be honest with you. It may be since November.
I agree.
I haven't even nothing. No mainstream media, because again, it's just ridiculous.
You know what? I think I mentioned to you, maybe the people out there at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, way in the breach on Sunday night. My life, all right, just to tell you something personal. My life during the day, okay, because I work nights and my wife works during the day. So when I wake up, I'm getting ready for work. I pray my rosary. I try to do a holy hour, okay. I stopped watching Fox back on November 4th. Okay, November 4th or 5th. And then I stopped watching Newsmax. Okay, because they came out and made a statement saying, we are going, this was before January 20th, we are going to refer to Joe Biden as President Biden. Newsmax gone. Do you know that during the day, other than the way I get my news, and this is a recommendation to all you good people out there, I am completely up on the news. I know everything that's going on, and so does Joe, and I don't turn on cable news at all. And I brought up during the day, particularly during the day. And I'll tell you another thing. It's much more liberating to sit in front of the computer and to find stories for the Frontline with Joe and read other things that are going on than listen to all the crap, even if it is like you said on Fox. I don't do it. I promise you all something. If you start with prayer in the morning and then segue into silence and kind of sit there with yourself, you are much less distracted. All of that stuff rots your brain, by the way. All of that cable news, regardless of whether you agree with it or not, it all rots your brain.
Well, it's throwing, that's one of the 24/7 news cycle is cancer in America.
We never went through this in our lives. We used to get the paper. We used to get the news. I used to go to Bruno's Candy Store on First Avenue in Newark. Okay, I get my cup of coffee in the morning. I get the New York Post. I read the Post. I have a Taylor ham, egg, and cheese with a cup of coffee. I go from the front to the editorials to the New York Jets. And that's how I got my news. You didn't have 24/7 news cycle
because it's just a propaganda machine. It's sad, and that's why it is the enemy of the American people. And I think a way to stop that is, like Joe said, if you start slandering people, they have to loosen the law that you call people out and make them pay.
New York Times versus Sullivan is the standard.
I mean, they have to change that because ultimately you don't have, the right to call people names or to destroy somebody for an agenda. If you use a term, you better be able to back it up, and it's not a slant, it's a fact. And sadly, too much of that gogoes on. If they did that, it would crack down. I think it would improve the news on both sides of the aisle.
I think you're right. And you can't go to court and say that person is against higher taxes. Well, what does that mean?
Well, that
means
doesn't mean they're a racist.
That doesn't mean
they're a hater.
And a sane judge is going to say, well, what the hell does that have to do with race? Okay, or whatever the case might be. So well, that person, they're against abortion. They hate women. Well, no, actually, that's not true. No, that doesn't prove your policy position on all of these things. Okay, has nothing to do with your disposition towards other human beings. You simply
they use it as a bludgeoning stick. I mean, that's what's going on. I mean, they use terms and they use it to shut you down because right now they can, because it's basically in vogue right now to shut people down. That's going to change because, like I said, it's not American.
But here's the key along those lines. I don't want to shut them down, and I don't. You know what? And I know you don't want to shut them down. You know what Joe and I want? We want to debate them. See, that I think is the biggest thing, is a matter of debate, is what we've lost. And really is a matter of what we've really lost in this country is I'm not going to turn around. See, I say that about Fox News. I didn't say to not put on the liberal point of view, just take a clip from CNN. My point is we're not afraid for them to get out their ideas out there. What we want, though, is them to be man enough and have enough stones to debate their positions. They'll never do that. You always say winners, losers on issues. Most of their issues, if not all, are losers. If there was an open and honest public debate, they get crushed. They don't get elected dog catcher, Joe Resadello. Not even dog catcher. And that's true.
That's why the press has just gotten out of control, and it has to be controlled. And I'm not talking about censoring the press. That's not what I mean. But you can't just call people names and it's not right. And frankly, that's why it has to go to the courts. They have to change that law, and they have to put shackles on both sides, the conservative and the liberal. You can't just call people names arbitrarily. If you do, it's going to cost you money. It would change. It would improve our press. It's a great freedom that we have here. This is very rare. Right. In a lot of parts of the world, they do not have this, and it's so abused. It's sad. It's one of the saddest realities that are going on in America is what's happened to the press. It's a joke and it's an embarrassment.
That's right. And one final point that I want to bring out on Beckett Adams, because Joe makes a good point as far as changing that New York Times versus Sullivan standard. So that will put them on their heels. But I think Beckett Adams is onto something to at least start moving the dial. It's not the solution. Okay. It's not or not ultimately the solution, but he makes a good point. He's because this would be a good start. If Republicans showed a little spine, Joe Resinello, which is obviously a lot to ask for from the party that we generally speaking vote for. Beckett Adams says, this is the modus operandi. Now, Republicans out there, I wish Ted Cruz was listening right now. This is the modus operandi for left-wing news organizations, Adams wrote. They see it as their job to kneecap Republicans, certainly not to debate issues dispassionately. Yet, for whatever reason, and here's the kicker, Republicans keep accepting invites to these shows. Republicans keep treating left-wing anchors and reporters as if they're fair and even-handed operators. If Republicans stop doing that, listen, I don't care. You always make the good point, okay? MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, ultimately they're businesses, okay? And if they're not making money, that's a problem for their business. Republicans, stop going on their network. And I promise you, the boards of directors are going to say, you guys better do something to get these people back. Because if that's what, because I'm going to tell you this, and I brought it up on the show before, go look up Air America. You might not find too much about it because they don't exist anymore. When you have a purely liberal venue, okay, in the case of Air America, it failed. It failed miserably. Why? Because it was nothing.
About that. What is it?
Air America was started, I think it was 10 or 15 years ago. They raised about $100 million, private, liberal, elitist money, okay? And that's all they did was liberal broadcasting. This was supposed to be their antidote to conservative talk radio. But conservative talk radio came up organically out of the free market. Now, this goes before Rush Limbaugh, particularly in the New York market. You had Barry Farber. You had Bob Grant, okay? All the precursors to Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin. I much prefer listening to Levin on the radio. I never watch his show on Fox. I always love to listen to him on the radio. I'm an AM radio guy. I always loved AM radio. But conservative talk radio sprung up and grew organically out of the free market because people felt, this is why we're covering this. People felt I don't have anybody on in let's say, for argument's sake, call it mainstream media as an outlet. But where are the conservatives? They're on talk radio. So AM talk radio blew up. Okay, and obviously we know with the success of Rush Limbaugh just how wide an audience there is out there. Air America was created. It's a joke. Was created to confront, or basically to offset, or to provide competition for AM talk radio, okay? And it failed miserably. $100 million lost. And then when they failed, they tried to go to the government for a bailout. And conservatives, if I remember the story correctly, stood up and said, absolutely not. You're not bailing them out. They failed. But here's my point. Why did they fail? Number one, the left wing is humorless. Rush Limbaugh was a funny guy. He was a funny guy. He was an entertaining guy. The left wing is humorless. They have people like Al Franken on there who swears he's talented. And I'm sorry, even before I ever knew he was a liberal and before he became a senator, it was the least funny segment on Saturday Night Live back in the day was Franken and Davis. It was stupid. Al Davis has always been stupid. He's not a very funny guy. You had Al Franken. You had all these liberals on there. And you know what? Even liberals didn't want to listen to it. You want to know why? They didn't want to hear shrieking, shrill commentary all day long. They wanted to be entertained. And my larger point, why Joe told me to tell you a story, is they tried it. They failed. We know that a purely liberal station, if MSNBC and CNN was purely liberal with no Republicans and no conservatives going on there whatsoever, they're going to fail. They're going to fail. Okay? So Republicans should take a little lesson from history and say, well, there were no Republicans and conservatives on Air America, and it went down in flames. Do the same thing on cable news. Don't go on their shows. That's the larger point.
I absolutely agree, and I followed DeSantis's lead on that too. I wouldn't invite them either. Tough. You're going to write what you want anyway. You don't have to be here. Read the bill. Write whatever you want. You're persona non grata, because frankly, the press is the enemy of the American people, and I include Fox in on that too. I don't trust them either. I don't watch them.
Haven't they shown that?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, other than a few individuals, haven't they shown that?
Like I said, all the mainstream media is garbage, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to the next one. We got Gabe Kaminsky of the Federals. He brings us this one. A major Swedish hospital. They're a dirty people, Joe. Anyway, the Swedish hospital stops prescribing, this is actually a good thing, puberty blockers and hormone treatments for minors under the age of 16. The decision makes Sweden the first country with a major hospital to abandon the Dutch protocol of administering puberty blockers for minors as young as 8 years old. Furthermore, Sweden now becomes the first country to abandon the World Professional Association for Transgender Health Guidelines, whatever the heck that is. Do we even have to talk about this? I read this and I said to myself, puberty blockers for children 8 years old? Are you crazy? Yes.
No, yeah.
Yes. And Sweden's making a stand. I don't even know why anyone has to make a stand. It's so obvious. Now, here for the record, Arkansas became the first state in the U.S. to ban gender mutilation and administering puberty blockers to those under 18. Good for you, Arkansas. And the Senate in Alabama voted in April to pass a bill to ban puberty blockers and hormones to minors, and it now heads to the House. 2? Like, is this absurd?
Why is this even a question?
Why is this even, like, first of all, why are we even talking about this? This is absurd.
Joe said a million times on this show that 20 years ago, these people would have been arrested. We need to start arresting them. And a mother or a father that allows this, okay, needs to be arrested. They need to have that kid taken away. Listen, it's called child abuse when you do something that's blatantly not in the child's interest. Altering their body at 8 years old through chemicals and hormones, and then potentially genital mutilation. So through surgery, you're going to alter your child for the rest of their lives, and you're going to call yourself a fit parent, and the state has nothing to say about that? If I gave my kid, if my mother was raising me now, okay, under the standards that they have, my mother would be arrested. These mothers that allow this to happen to their children are put up on pedestals. My mother would be in jail. And today was Mommy's Day. And I took my mother out to dinner with my brother and my sister and my other brother-in-law. And the bottom line is this: I love my mother. My mother, if she was raising me in 2021, would go to jail for because I was a hooligan. So my mother used to give us a lot of backhands, deservedly so. But those backhands would have landed my mother in some pretty hot water.
Well, I know what it is. It's certain communities in certain states. I think for the most part, most people are against this. This is one of those things that you're overplaying your hand. But shame on a lot of these states that are not taking a stand. I believe it was Arkansas. If I'm wrong, please correct me, that the governor did not sign it. Was it Arkansas?
I believe, yeah. Asa Hutchinson.
Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is what Portnoy talks about, standing up to the bullies. The answer is no. Listen, if I'm a politician, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing it. I should be doing it because I want to serve, right? I have a skill set that I'm going to take to the American people, and I'm going to serve. If it basically means that I have to go along with this, whether I'm a Republican or a Democrat, I'm not doing it. If I'm a principal of a high school and it means that I have to go along with this, like I have to look a 10-year-old in the face, I'm the principal of a grammar school in a public high school, you name the state, and I have to look a 10-year-old in the state because the union, the teachers union, says that they're on board with this bull crap. And I have to basically convince them to go or recommend a doctor that is potentially going to help them to transition. I'm not keeping that job. I can't do, but it's going to be honest with you. I can't live with myself is the whole point. I couldn't live with myself to look at a child and basically say, this is what you should do. I can't speak for someone else. I could just speak for me.
When they do this to the kids, they should keep a record of where that kid went to school and who was responsible for administering this, particularly the parents, okay? And when that kid kills themselves, because the suicide rate amongst these kids, okay,
they don't even make it. A lot of them don't make it to 40.
Don't make it to 40 years old. That principal or that teacher or that nurse in that school or that social worker, they need to be dragged to that person's dead body and be told right to their face, you're responsible for this.
It's so sad.
You did this.
This is so sad that this is where we're at.
We're so afraid to tell people in this, or in the world in general, but in America in particular, you're doing something wrong.
This is over the top. I can't even believe we're talking about it. And even during Obama's administration, this would not have been talked about. This is what I'm saying. And this is, I'm not going to talk about the number of people who voted for Joe Biden. This was very clear. In one of the town halls, on CNN. It was an 8-year-old, a woman talking about their kid.
Right.
And we're not talking about respecting the kid. Of course, I'm going to respect the kid. You know what I'm going to do first and foremost? I'm going to get the kid help. As in, I think you should talk to somebody. You can't even do that.
No, because what you're doing is you're acknowledging that there is something called a disorder.
And it is a disorder.
It's a disorder.
Sorry. And 10 years ago, they would have called it that.
Well, honest people still do.
Scientists would have called it that. You see, this is where, again, it's cowardly and it's a shame because it's a child. This is absurd. And here's another thing. We're not going to talk about the number of people who voted for Joe Biden, but what we are going to talk about is this. People who voted for him, this is one of the things you're supporting. And it's not just in poor schools. You see, a lot of times people vote for things and they just know, well, that happens to those people in those neighborhoods. Well, no. The teachers union is the biggest union in America. This is going on in rich and poor neighborhoods, and in some cases more so in rich neighborhoods because people are more woke. Average neighborhoods, like in my school district, it's solidly middle class. My kids don't go to public school, but if they did, at the same time, it's not as crazy.
If you're a single black woman in Newark who has 2 sons, okay, you know what she'll tell you? If you asked her and you said, "Do you want your sons to come home and say they're gay?" She's going to look at you and go, "Are you crazy?" Absolutely not. Okay, you go to some of these woke elitist counties. Okay, but let's use New Jersey, and you tell one of these married moms who has a couple sons, you want your son to come home and tell you that at 8 years old, and that he thinks he's a girl. That woman wouldn't have the stomach, because remember, when you're woke, it's not because you necessarily believe it, but you do it a lot of times for status. You want to get invited to the cocktail parties, for a whole bunch of reasons.
They brainwash themselves too.
Well, see, that's the thing too.
Completely.
They convince themselves that, oh, well, let me not really say, I don't really want my son to come home and tell me he's a girl, so I don't want to talk about that right now. They just sit there and they pray to the God that they say they don't believe in, that please don't let my son come home at 8 years old and say he thinks he's a girl, because I don't want to deal with that. In other words, but the black mother in Newark, she'll turn around and say, my son comes home gay, I'm going to beat the gay out of him. That's what that mother would say.
Well, I'm not even just talking about, I'm talking about, like, forget about the gay piece. Because frankly, sadly, I think we were talking about this before the show. Ultimately, that's not going anywhere. Gay marriage in America.
Go tell everybody what your view is on that.
That is the
Joe says winners and losers all the time.
The winner. Actually, I think the Republicans will be on board with that soon because it's a winner.
Bruce Jenner's running for governor of California under a Trump agenda.
It'll be that's going nowhere, like it or not. But the transgender piece, that's a loser. Because regular people who have kids and work and pay bills and get up in the morning, they're not going into that. Even in liberal states, and we've covered stories in Illinois, we've covered stories in New Jersey, it doesn't get bluer. People protesting in Trenton, school districts, prominent school districts in Illinois having issue with this. That goes over the top. Chemically castrating an 8-year-old, no way. Get out of my face.
Right. There's only so many names you could call these people before they say what Nolte said. Go F yourself.
You know, like, I'm not going, like, and I'll be honest with you. You know, there's lines in the sand. I'm going to jail for that one. Let's put it that way. That one I'll go to jail for. And I'm not doing it. If I was in that position, I'd have to resign. If I was a superintendent, I can't live with myself to say to a child, I'm not making myself out to be holier than thou. I think that's just common sense. I can't do that. So
hopefully Sweden is getting a little bit of dose of common sense, and probably too, that probably, hopefully they're becoming authentically woke, and they understand, actually, something, this is a really bad idea. Giving hormones to little kids, that's kind of a really bad idea. I know we're not supposed to use words like good and bad, okay, because that's so judgmental. But Sweden might be saying, that's a really bad idea. Let's not do it, okay?
Well, last story tonight.
By the way, Decox says it's all satanic. Absolutely right, Decox. Absolutely right.
100% right. Life News covered this one. An arsonist set fire to a pro-life pregnancy center, causing $250,000 in damage. That was in Peoria, Illinois. And the interesting thing about this is not only does this help women, obviously, on the pro-life side of the aisle, but it also provided diapers, clothes, and other supplies to moms for free. So it's helping all moms, whether regardless of your position, and that gets taken away.
Right.
Just to give a little background on the facility, this center, Women's Care Center in Peoria, was opened in 2013 next to an abortion facility. 6 years later, the abortion facility closed.
That's right.
The pro-life organization provides free counseling, pregnant tests, ultrasounds, and other support to pregnant and parenting mothers. Pregnancy resource centers provide vital education and support to millions of moms and babies every year across the world. However, abortion activists and liberal news outlets often malign their work. Now, again, what happened to tolerance? Okay,
the choice.
So you have your thing on my side, your side of the street. Well, I open it on my side of the street, and it gets burned down. No one covers it. And by the way, I'm helping women, i.e., I'm giving stuff out. Diapers, diapers cost a lot of money, just so you know. I know. I have 4 kids under 7, 2 of which are still in diapers, and I'm expecting my 5th child. So diapers cost money. I'll tell you that right now. Giving diapers for free to people is a help, irregardless of what your political affiliation is, irregardless of what color your skin you have. That's gone. It's not covered. It's disgusting. It is disgusting. Now, let's turn the dial. If a pro-life person was to do that across the other street, it would be all over the place. It would be all over the place. And this just is, again, another great example of how illegitimate the media is.
Well, it is, because let's face it, and we said this before on the show, okay? I haven't in a few months, because Joe started a men's rosary here on the first Saturday of the month. So I've been spending more of my time, let's say, Joe and I usually do interviews for Frontline with Joe, and then we do the men's rosary. But I've been down in front of Planned Parenthood many, many times over the last 4 or 5 years, okay, down on Bleecker Street in New York City, okay? What these dishonest, disingenuous liars try to say is that, let's say somebody like me who joins 150 Catholics at Old St. Patrick's Cathedral, 8 o'clock in the morning, first Saturday of the month, celebrate Mass, receive Jesus in the Eucharist, and then process down to Planned Parenthood, that somehow they'll equate what we're doing, praying the rosary across the street from Planned Parenthood, okay, not blocking sidewalks, okay, simply praying. They'll equate that activity, which is peaceful and prayerful, with these idiots who decided that they wanted to set fire to a pro-life pregnancy center. They'll say, well, the right does it too. Look at how they protest in front of abortion clinics. That's my right. I have a right. The Supreme Court says I have a right to do that. So the Supreme Court actually says that there's no buffer zone in front of the door of an abortion facility. Okay? But yet, even as us, we're respectful. Father Fidelis Mashinsky is respectful enough. He runs it, and we go on the other side of the street. We don't block the door. We're praying to Almighty God that He'll stop the woman from going in, and many of them do. My point is, again, it's the same thing as we talked about earlier, about when you're called racist and it's a lie. You're going to try to equate me praying the rosary with this guy who burned a pro-life pregnancy center and caused $250,000 in damage. And they go on shows like Bill Maher. You know who's fair? You know who's fair? Sam Harris, who I disagree with on every. Sam Harris, the atheist? Famous atheist. He was one of the 4 horsemen. Okay, him, Christopher Hitchens, Dawkins, and Daniel Dennett. Sam Harris was actually on Bill Maher's show one time. And he said he was talking about the left and their tolerance of radical Islam and all the violence that they commit. Okay. And Sam Harris said, you guys are still talking about an abortion clinic that was bombed in the 1980s. He was talking about the left. See, even he gets it. You're trying to make it seem like pro-life people are bombing abortion clinics. Not the case. It's not happening. If it was, it'd be in the. Would you agree? It would be on. It would be in the press every single day. Yet, and so it doesn't occur. Is my point. It does not occur. pro-life people, particularly Catholics, they don't bomb abortion clinics, okay? They don't beat the crap out of the guys and the women who are committing the abortions. They pray for people, but yet this is direct violence against a pro-life pregnancy center, and it goes unreported.
But even look at how, like, when Trump was the president, what went on in this country versus now. Do you see any Republicans causing violence? I mean, it should scream at you. Oh, they always point to January 6th. Okay. Let's just, for argument's sake, we'll give it to you.
I'll give it to you, except for the little fat bearded kid who's obviously an identified member of Antifa was there prodding them. So until you start blaming Antifa too, I'm not listening to you. I know what you're saying.
I'm just saying, just from like, okay, keep it. What has happened since then? Look at all the damage that was done. Billions of dollars. It's ignored. I laughed when people on social media after January says, call the National Guard. I cracked up when I saw that. I was like, really? Call the National Guard? What happened the last 3 months across this nation? The nation was burning. You didn't say a word.
Right.
I mean, it's absurd. Again, that's the sickness in America, the way people are. But I want to talk about something offline after I go down the litany of other pregnancy centers that have been attacked and nobody covers it. In New York, I believe it was this weekend, Father Jerzy Popoluszko, who basically, if I'm butchering the name, it's par for the course, but he was a Polish martyr who fought against communism during the Solidarity movement. There's a statue in New York City for him. There's a lot of Polish Americans, and there's a statue of him. He's a great man. It was vandalized.
Really?
Why isn't that a hate crime?
Right.
Why isn't that a hate crime? He was a Catholic priest. Do you imagine if you did that to a Jewish monument or you did that to a Muslim monument? And I don't advocate that. So please, I'm just saying, if that was
to happen,
how the coverage of it, it's nowhere. No one cares. Again, I don't even bring these things up anymore to talk about the press because it's just a given. It's a given. I used to go nuts. Now I've just accepted it. It's a reality. We're handicapped. They don't cover things like that because they don't care.
Well, that's why we need alternative or parallel media. I want to get on this real quick, okay? I mentioned the Rosary Rally. JC, thanks for the info, JC. JC, our email, which is public, but I'll give it to you. It was frontlinewithjoeandjoe@gmail.com, okay? JC says, in Montclair, by Bloomfield Avenue, there's an abortion clinic. Now, we know that one because many people from here go there to go and pray the rosary in front of there, and you're trying to get people to pray the rosary there. Shoot us an email, JC, and we'll see what we could do, because Joe and I, we've been going around to parishes in Bergen County, but we were talking to a couple of people that is something that we might want to do, especially as we're growing. Okay, we started with 15 people. We had it had to be close to 50 people. The first Saturday of this month, there were some women there also, and we're not going to exclude any women. They want to come and pray the rosary. Some Hispanics there. We prayed 1 decade in Spanish. It was a beautiful, beautiful witness. I'm sure everyone there would love to come to Montclair and pray in front of that abortion clinic. And I will say this, JC, and many people know this. We've said this on the show before. From Planned Parenthood's own lips, okay, because we know a lot of people down there that are really at the front line. They say when people are praying outside the abortion clinic, the no-show rate at Planned Parenthood is over 50%. Simply by being there, you're saving a life. So, JC, hit us up an email, and we'll communicate, maybe not this month, but we'll try to coordinate something. We'll make something like that happen. We'll send out an email on our end, and we'll see if we can get 100 guys on Bloomfield Avenue in Montclair, and not to have Dickie D's hot dogs. We'll be there to say pray the rosary in front of an abortion clinic.
Here's some other pregnancy centers that were targets of arson and vandalism in recent years. Texas, abortion center vandalized second time this year. Illinois, Chicago Pregnancy Center, mobile van vandalized, tire slashed. North Carolina, pregnancy center van vandalized with pro-abortion graffiti. New York, pro-life pregnancy center posters torn down, vandalized. Virginia, pregnancy center vandalized with Jesus hates this SHIT sprayed on the wall. New Mexico, arson destroys pro-life pregnancy center. FBI investigating it as a possible hate crime.
Well, that's a good thing.
Canada, abortion activists vandalize pregnancy center offering women abortion alternatives. And Germany, we covered this story a while back. Pregnancy center vandalized, windows smashed.
Go back to Canada for 1 second.
Abortion activists vandalized pregnancy center offering women abortion alternatives.
I thought it was about choice.
No.
I thought it was about choice. What's wrong with someone offering these women another choice? If it's pro-choice, what's wrong with the other choice? And then getting back to the double standard. You're talking about an abortion clinic that got bombed in 1985 and comparing this, and these are all recent. What Joe just read to you is recent, and the scumbag media doesn't cover it. I'm going to tell you something interesting. In Denver, and for all you people out in Denver, okay, my wife and I have a couple friends out there, okay, Bishop Aquila. Right across, because this is about pro-life pregnancy centers. Our friends who are wealthy, they're people of means, okay? Very good Catholics, very involved in the pro-life movement, amongst other things, okay? So our one friend, she helped to build the pro-life pregnancy center. It is diagonally across from Planned Parenthood. The bishop, okay, now, number one, that's a beautiful thing in and of itself. I like to think, I am confident that that pregnancy center will be there a long time after that abortion clinic shuts down, God willing, like very soon. Archbishop Aquila went there to that Planned Parenthood and did the Jericho March, a rosary rally going around, what is it, 7 times in the book of Joshua? Joshua went around Jericho 7 times, and the sun stood still. So it was using that as their inspiration. My point is that, notice, we need to support these pro-life pregnancy centers. Maybe donate some money to them. They're doing a great job. These women, Joe, how many women walk out of a Planned Parenthood and have nowhere to go? But if there's a pro-life pregnancy center right there down the block, especially if a counselor says, go down the block, just right down the block, right away, or escort them down, the same way Planned Parenthood escorts them in to go and kill their baby when they come out because they have second thoughts, escort them down to the pro-life pregnancy center so that they can get real alternatives, okay? But of course, Planned Parenthood is against that. Why, Joe? Why?
Money. But
money.
Also, I think a lot of this violence stems from the fact that people, like, listen, we're also sympathetic to people who do this. The Catholic Church is about forgiveness. We've all done things that are bad. Sadly, people can't admit that they've done this. They've killed. They've squashed a life, and it's a reaction. You see, if people healing has to take place, you know what I'm saying? And this is what I'm saying. Like, people who react in this way, they may have been involved in an abortion, and they can't get themselves to say, "Well, I did this." So it's a reaction, and it could be violent reaction. You know, all people have to do is say, like, again, obviously there are consequences, just, you know, but God forgives, you know, ultimately. We all have done bad things, but sadly, that's not what's going on. You know, they're not seeking that forgiveness. They're not acknowledging what they've done. And I think that's the backlash. You know, it's an explosion.
Not wanting to recognize this over here.
Correct.
Somehow they justify it in their mind, and then they rail against anyone
in a violent way. I mean, because again, I don't agree with them clearly, but I don't hurt them, or do I want to bomb their facility or hurt anybody in it? If anything, I'm praying. Why does that bother you? Why does it bother you that I'm praying? I'm not doing, I know, of course it does. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not hurting you, and I'm across the street. What am I doing to you? You could still walk in. You see, this is what I mean. You know, I was kind of in a conversation this week. The left has a problem with authority. We all do, to a degree, because every time we sin, we don't listen, you know. But particularly, I'm not going to get into like a theological conversation, but I'm going to focus in on the left in particular, particularly the hard left. Authority, man or God. I will not listen. I will not listen. And that's why their neighborhoods are a disaster. And I'm talking about neighborhoods that are run by perennial Democratic organizations, governors, mayors. They're a disaster. They're not run well. They have an issue with authority. man or God, at the root of all the problems. And frankly, you tell a tree by the fruit it bears, and the fruit is bad. And it has been bad. And shame on us as Americans that for voting for it.
Yeah.
Seriously, that was like Trump's comment that I always found to be interesting. Of course, they destroyed him on it when he said to basically the African-American population of America, he said, listen, what do you have to lose? What he's basically saying is, what have the Democratic Party done for you?
Destroy their families, destroy their neighborhoods.
Decades. And I could go down a litany of cities.
It's not like African Americans were at the level they're at now, and the Democrats just didn't do anything to help them. The African American family, African American communities were we're living at so much of a higher standard of family life and prosperity. Okay, until the Democrats sunk their teeth into them. Okay, and they wrecked them. And so it's like, it's not like blacks weren't doing so well and the Democrats, well, they just failed. They didn't improve their life. No, the Democrats did everything they could to destroy the black family, to destroy these neighborhoods. They still do it to this day, to keep these people down. And abortion is a big part of it. I want to make one comment because Colin said, abortion is the biggest genocide the world has ever seen, and it continues to this day. One of the ways, Colin, that Joe and I, we're gonna take what do you call Nolte's advice, and we're going to tell them basically not F you. We say it in our own way. Okay, our way is to flip the script on them. Okay, by saying things like you just said. Next time somebody tells me they're pro-choice, as long as not I'm at work, because everybody knows you'll get canceled nowadays. I hear anybody say, well, I'm pro-abortion. Oh, so you agree with Nazis and slave masters? That's what I'm going to start saying. And let them, like Joe said, you used to mention about conscience, let that swish around in their head a little bit, in their conscience, and watch them go. What do you mean? You're comparing me to a Nazi? Yeah. Nazi dehumanized their victims. They dehumanized Jews. That's the way they sold what they did to the Jews, starting with the anti-Jewish laws, and then subsequently after that, the death camps themselves. Slave masters did the same thing. They dehumanized the African. They said, yeah, well, he looks like us. I know he has arms and fingers and feet and legs and toes, but not really a human being. Therefore, we could steal that person's liberty and we could steal their labor. They justified it. And abortionists do the same thing to the human person residing in his or her own mother's womb. It's the same argument.
You can't do it even now. I think it's harder, and frankly, they almost admit what they're doing, because science has gotten to a point when you have a child and you look at the sonogram, a baby's heartbeat is detectable at 6 weeks. I mean, this is science. Like you can go down the litany, and also a child in the womb starts to look like a child. You start seeing it very early. Again, I have 4 kids, and my wife is pregnant. She's in their 2nd trimester with our 5th child. I'm pretty versed in it. So and you could even get 3D sonograms, where you actually could see expression on faces. I mean, it's incredible. So my point is, they know what they're doing. Sure. It's about sex. We've said this time and time again. Abortion is about sex. I will not give up my pleasure. Ultimately, again, I waste my breath, but I mean, that's why the Catholic Church says you're supposed to wait till you get married to have sex. That's why. Because if you have a child outside of an uncommitted relationship, you want to get rid of it. That's at the root of abortion. That's the root of it. And our society can't let that go, because it's recreational sex, and won't let that go. And I'll be honest with you, in my view, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think there'll ever be a political solution to abortion because of that, because the Republicans are not going to move on it either. I'll tell you a winner. If they because they overplay their hand, the 3rd trimester abortion is a loser. But a winner is this: you could have abortions in the 1st trimester. The Republicans are signing it.
Yeah.
It's over, and the argument is done. If they all, I'm just telling you, political wins. If they said,
don't think for a second that Joe and I agree with that.
If they said that, politically speaking, the argument is over. It will not even be debated anymore.
And card-carrying, pro-life, conservative Republicans would say, look, let's just put this whole thing to bed.
Over.
That's it. And God, let me tell you something. We fight now to abolish abortion. True pro-life people want abortion abolition, rightfully so. Just like in the 19th century, true Christians in the churches in New England were abolitionists and spoke out against the immorality, the evil of slavery. Okay. Now they tried compromising on slavery. Didn't work. They said, well, one state can have it, one state cannot. This state comes into the Union as a free state. This one comes in as a slave state. Led to nothing but a civil war. 500,000 Americans dead in a civil war to get to an end of slavery as one of the consequences of the North winning and end slavery in America. Okay. This idea of overturning Roe versus Wade, okay, which is going to appeal to a lot of conservatives, we'll let the states decide. Or like you said, let's just have one federal law that says abortion's allowed up to the first trimester. Here's our warning from the front line with Joe and Joe to all you so-called Christian conservatives who might be in favor of that, okay? Heaven help this country from God's wrath, because that will be the trigger for people to give up on that issue. That will be the trigger for people to say, I'm not concerned with abortion anymore because it can only happen in the first trimester.
Well, it's not even going to go there because they'll never let it go. That's if they were smart.
Politically. That's if the left was smart politically.
But it won't even go there because they're not. I'm talking purely about wins and losses politically. But my whole point of even bringing this up is this. God is going to stop this. Trust your friend Joe Resinello. Trust me. The Great Reset is not going to be what they think.
Oh, yeah.
The Great Reset, someone put in the chat room today, they said basically that we're headed for a dark period. I actually think so too. I do, outside of a miracle.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone too far. That's going to be the Great Reset. The Great Reset is America. We're going, I don't know how long it's going to be. It's going to be a period of suffering. It could be economic suffering. It could be political persecution. I don't know. We'll see how it manifests itself as time moves on. We have become so depraved that we're willing to chemically castrate a child in America and don't blink an eye. People, whoa. And we're willing to kill a child in the third trimester. Whoa. What is that about? God will put a stop to this. And if you think, you may laugh at me to say this, trust me on this. This is going to stop. And it's not going to be political. Just like the Israelites were slaves in Egypt. What happened? Pharaoh was forced out. They wouldn't give up. They wouldn't give up. He wiped them off the face of the earth. I'm not saying that we're going to get wiped off the face of the earth, but God will put a stop. These are sins that cry to heaven.
It's the sin of Abel. It's the destruction of innocent life. And yes, an 8-year-old or 7-year-old who you impose this gender ideology on by trying to convince that kid and then administering chemicals and hormones and surgery. God help you. In other words, when God's wrath comes, and yes, this is a little fire and brimstone, God is tolerant and God is loving. Only to a degree is he tolerant. He tolerated a lot of things in human history. But when his tolerance comes to an end, it doesn't end well for a lot of people. Okay, it does not end well. We need to get our heads on straight now. And I'm tired of this idea that we can't argue for morality. Slavery was abolished in the British Empire because of the arguments of Wilberforce. He made a moral argument. He wasn't making a political one. He wasn't making an economic one. He made a moral argument. You call yourself a Christian nation, but yet you steal the liberty and the labor of other human beings. And eventually, before he died or just after he died, the British Empire outlawed slavery. Okay, but he argued from morality. He argued from God's law. We talked about it earlier. Tell them to go F themselves. I argue from morality, from God's law. You cannot kill innocent human beings in the womb, period. The end. It is a violation of every idea of what would be a moral law, and certainly a violation of the natural law, which all people know. Women are not allowed to kill their children. It's that simple. And we need to start arguing along those lines. Stop letting them say you can't bring religion into it. You absolutely can. That's one of the reasons why slavery was ended. in the British Empire because of the moral argument, and that's the argument amongst others that we have to make. But that one, first and foremost, it's simply wrong and it's evil. And we need to start speaking in those terms. I'm not understanding you if you want to kill your kid. Oh, I can't go to school because I'm pregnant. I'm 17. You went out and got pregnant. Bring your child into the world and give your kid up for adoption.
That's it. I'll tell you, talking about that story, I can remember I was backpacking in Cambodia and I visited an orphanage. And we don't have orphanages. You know, Babe Ruth came from an orphanage. Mm-hmm. We don't have orphanages. And when I visited this orphanage, I thought to myself, I said, every one of these kids in America are dead.
Yeah.
There are no orphanages anymore because we abort these children. This is a poor nation. So they basically will have the children, they give it. It was an ex-Buddhist monk that ran the frigging, orphanage, basically. God bless him. But the point is, all those children are eradicated in this country. It's a sin that, listen, if you've had an abortion, we love you. Reconcile it with God. It will be a burden off your back. We love you. It's a burden. You made a bad decision. We've all made bad decisions in life. Reconcile it with God. It's not the way to have a good society. Abortion has pitted man against woman, and the child is in between. It is a bad practice. And this is what I'm saying. We've come outside of a miracle. I don't know how it stops. But it will stop because it's an atrocity. It's an atrocity. It really is if you step back from it. And if you were involved in an abortion, there are plenty of organizations that will help you to reconcile that. Particularly if you're Catholic, go to confession. Listen, I went to confession Saturday. I go to confession regularly. I'm the first one to say, I'm a sinner. Go to confession. You'll feel better. That's all I'm going to say. And we love you.
That's it.
Honest to goodness.
We love you.
We're not condemning you, but this is because who am I?
Call the Sisters of Life. They'll help you.
But my point is, at the end of the day, this is not a good practice for a healthy society. And our society is off the rails. It's off the rails. And Republican or Democrat, put it all aside. It's off the hook. And we've got to pull it back, because I'll tell you right now, if we don't, it's over, people. It really is. Yeah. It's over.
It's almost over. I mean, you can foresee it being over. But one thing Joe and I are not going to do, okay, if it will be divine intervention that puts an end to all of this evil that's going on, not just in America, but in the world, God's going to say, what did you do? Talking to us. What did you do? He's going to say to you. He's going to say to them, what did you? And at the very least, I'm going to say, Lord, I opened my mouth. I know we could have done so much more, but I didn't sit on my hands and I didn't do nothing about it. At least I opened my mouth. At least I didn't cower in the face of evil people. We confronted them. We stood up to them. We welcomed them to debate and civil debate and argument to try to change the laws in this country, but it didn't sit down and do nothing. I'm going to be accused of a lot of things from our Lord because I'm a sinner, but not that. I want it to be known. In other words, I fought this fight, and so does Joe, and so do all of you out there. So let's keep fighting this fight. And by God's grace, things will turn around.
No, well, God always has the last word,
Has his day, right?
That he does. But like I said, we have to do our part. And part of that is also voting and prioritizing things in voting. And frankly, if you ask me, there's certain things that are disqualifiers. I don't care what else you have to say. If you told me that slavery was on your platform, I don't care what you have to say on the economy. I'm not voting for you.
Right.
Period.
You're out.
You want to enslave, you name the person, whatever. You want to enslave people under 5'4". I'm not voting for you.
You're right. Ain't happening.
Well, I'm not voting for you if you're for abortion. I'm not voting for you if you're for same-sex marriage. I'm not voting for you.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And if both parties were for it, then I'm writing in my wife to be the president.
I'll vote for her.
There you go.
All right. I'll vote for Joe. His wife will get at least 3, but well, 4. His wife will get 4 votes. Herself, Joe's, mine, and my wife.
So I'll vote because it's my duty to vote, but I'm not voting for either of you.
let's bring it to an end there, Joe. I do want to point out, Zach. Welcome, Zach. I haven't seen you before, so welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Zach said the culture war. It's real. It's exactly right. Somebody else commented, let's take care of the culture. You guys must be already been watching the front line with Joe and Joe. We've been saying, let's take care of the culture. However, we could fight the culture war and vote in the meantime. But ultimately, the culture, which means bringing back a real Christian, authentically Christian culture to America that recognizes moral boundaries, that's going to be the first one. All right. And we'll get into that in another show. But you're exactly right, Zach, and welcome. Culture war, it's real. That's why we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe, Sunday nights at 8 o'clock across all sorts of social media. Please remember to download the Veritas Catholic Network mobile app. Joe and I have about 8 or 9 interviews on there. On their podcast site, from Bill Donahue to John Burke.
Yeah, you'll like them
today.
They're very good.
There's really good interviews. We have, an interview every week. So we definitely recommend downloading the Veritas Catholic Network mobile app. Please visit the Crusade channel, crusadechannel.com. And that's Mike Church's station out of New Orleans. We have our Monday talk show there late in the afternoon. So we would encourage you to take advantage of their free 30-day trial subscription. We think you'll like it very much. And as always, please just keep us in your prayers. And remember, until next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you next week.
Be well. Thank you for listening.